Later today, Harvey Weinstein's trial continues in New York, where he's facing 5 charges, including rape and predatory sexual assault relating to 2 unnamed accusers. He's pleaded not guilty to those. Alongside that case, though, in the last 24 hours, further charges have also been brought against him in Los Angeles. Well, let's go back to Ross, who is there for the latest. It's a little bit confusing, this, Ross. Can you clarify for us what exactly is going on?
OK, so first off, as you said, the trial got underway in New York Monday. They still have to get the jury together. There is talk that that could take almost 2 weeks. Then the trial itself will run for approximately another 6 weeks after that. So that is the New York side of thing. And as you mentioned, there are 2 women who have come forward with allegations of sexual assaults, including rape. Now, Monday, out came new sex crime charges, which are being filed here in Los Angeles. Again, the allegations are from 2 unnamed women, and these include rape in a hotel room back in 2013, and then another sexual assault the following evening. These are from 2 different women. As we've mentioned before, Weinstein has denied all these charges, but the word earlier on out here in Los Angeles was that there was now going to be an attempt to get the trial in New York postponed, but we hear that possibly will not happen, but this was because of the new charges that had been filed here in Los Angeles. Obviously, this all ignited the Me Too movement, so very important in time coming up.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you very much indeed. And with me now is Harvey Weinstein's former assistant, Rowena Chiu, who claims the film mogul tried to force himself upon her. Seeing images like that, and you know he's got the Zimmer frame and he looks terrible. How do you feel seeing that man in this situation now? Do you feel vindicated, or what does it feel like?
It's obviously very tough when you see, you know, a lot of media coverage. I can only hope that media coverage of Weinstein and his defence team, you know, is balanced out by stories from the accusers. Yesterday, we heard powerfully, you know, a number of accusers gathered on the courtroom steps.
Indeed.
And made a statement, including Rose McGowan. And so, you know, it's a difficult time for the press, but one hopes that they will present a balanced view and that we'll hear as much from the accusers as we will from Harvey's defence team.
No, indeed, because they're very powerful men, and that's the key of this, isn't it? It's power.
Yeah.
So when you started working for him, you were warned, weren't you? You were told. I mean, everybody knew what he was like.
Yes, so I think that there's a difference. You know, I was 24. It was, you know, really pretty much my 2nd or 3rd job out of university. And to some extent, we were all warned. You know, I took an interview with Zelda and she mentioned that
Zelda was his assistant?
Zelda was his assistant at the time. And she mentioned that it was, you know, that he would be difficult to handle and that it was important to handle him robustly. And I had already worked for several executives who were pretty hard to handle. So it didn't come as a surprise to me that he was prone to fits of rage. You know, he would throw things and that there was a sort of culture of keeping him happy, you know, a bit of a culture of fear, really, running around, people from fairly senior to pretty junior, making sure that, you know, everything was in place for his office. So there's a bit of a difference between that and then thinking that you're going to work for a serial rapist. You know, at that time, people believed that he wasn't faithful to his wife, people believed he had affairs, people thought he was, you know, perhaps even a bit of a sleazebag with inappropriate behaviour, inappropriate language, maybe wandering hands. But I don't think any of us who worked for him in his office thought he was a serial rapist who habitually held women down to beds or held them against a wall. Because I think no young woman, as much as you want to work in film, would deliberately go and work for a serial rapist.
Of course not.
But it was quite common in the industry that people had, you know, dodgy reputations.
And that's really difficult for a young girl to cope with something like that. I mean, he did what he did to you. How on earth you kind of work that out in your head? Because you're so young and it seems that he's so powerful. How on earth are you supposed to do anything about it?
And I think it's tricky because 20 years later, you're looking back with the benefit, or one is looking back with the benefit of a great deal of hindsight. And obviously I'm now in my 40s, so I can look back on myself in my 20s and think, gosh, I was so young and so naive in many ways. But at the same time, I think, you know, one has to remember that myself at 24 and Zelda at 25, you know, what we did with the NDA and the types of clauses that we tried to negotiate were, in fact, pretty far-sighted in the sense that those clauses attempted to cover and protect women that would follow us. And unfortunately, the enforcement of the clauses in our NDA did turn out in practice to be very difficult, if not impossible. But a number of those clauses, were they able to take effect, would have protected women that followed us. For example, we tried to negotiate very hard for a clause that would say that Harvey wouldn't be alone in hotel rooms with single female assistants, that there would always be 2 female assistants accompanying him at any one time, or a male assistant. And he was expected to, if he assaulted anyone else in a 2-year period after our agreement, which was in '98, he was expected to report himself to Disney. And obviously, that didn't happen. But, I think a word of caution in terms of negotiating these NDAs, at the time we felt, wow, this is a legal contract. So surely it'll be abided by. But in fact, enforcement is a very, very difficult thing.
Because effectively, with non-disclosure agreements, with payoffs, he does kind of get away with it in a sense, but not now. But do you think that things have changed? There's been a shift in the whole culture. Do you think things have changed significantly?
Given that the Me Too movement is now so huge, and it's sort of beyond the Harvey Weinstein story, it is one story that sparked an entire movement, and then several senior men, in Hollywood and also other industries, were exposed for being sexual predators that they are. I like to think that a seismic shift has occurred in culture, in society, and globally. But, it's a difficult thing. I think some days I wake up and think, wow, look at everything this movement has actually achieved. And look at the number of women that are now speaking out, of different nationalities, different situations, who were assaulted over a number of decades. And you think this is incredibly powerful. But I've got to admit, yes, there are mornings when I wake up and think, I don't know, to create real change, how much of this is going to genuinely affect workplaces and genuinely change things for our daughters and our grandchildren.
Do you think he'll get away with it? Is that your fear?
So there's a difference between getting away with something legally and getting away with something culturally and socially. I would like to think he won't make the comeback that he's hoping for.
Because he still thinks that he's going to come back in the movies, doesn't he?
I think he's pretty adamant that he's had a gruelling couple of years, but he's going to get over it, and he's now in therapy, and society's going to welcome him back. I sincerely hope that doesn't happen. In terms of will he be behind bars, I think that's trickier. Due to issues like jurisdiction and statute of limitations and just the way the legal system is set up, it means that the New York trial is dependent on the testimony of 2 women. The LA trial is also dependent on the testimony of 2 women, and yet there are another 98 accusers out there. So I think it's difficult. I think the law is very limiting in terms of who is able to witness and who is able to bring their cases forward, and that's a struggle.
It is very much so. But I mean, when you think about it, he forced himself upon you, as you claim. He really virtually forced you out of an industry that you loved working in.
Yes.
And now, though, it's taken a long, long time. But you'd like to think that now, surely some justice will come for the victims.
I hope some justice will come to the victims. I think for those of us that were forced out of the film industry pretty young, in many ways it's a bit too late to wind back the clock. But if we can make a difference for the generations to come and for young women who are working in Hollywood today and other difficult industries, then it'll absolutely all be worth it.
Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Thank you. What a survivor. Thank you very much.